Honorable members, let us pray. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to look with favor upon this Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Grant that it may perform its high duty as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic. Endow members of Parliament and ministers of state with discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through the labors of government, this land and people may be well and truly served, and our good purposes for the common human life be realized in our midst. Amen. O God, grant us a vision of our country, fair as it might be, a country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, a country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, a country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service and honor shall be given to the deserving, a country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the efforts of those to make this vision a living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people, that they may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Honorable members, let me, on behalf of leadership and on my part, apologize for keeping you waiting. We had to agree on the ground rules to proceed to end the debate on the budget today, and also on the way forward after the conclusion of the debate. Because committees will have to now go into the details of the provisions that have been proposed for each sector. And so it took a lot of time in the discussion with leadership and the Ministry of Finance. We have finally agreed that the two leaders will conclude the debate today, and I put the question. We finally agreed that each leader will be given 45 minutes. They wanted more, and we managed to lobby them to reduce to 45. I will stick to the 45, and I will make sure they don't go beyond 45 minutes each. After that, we may adjourn for committees to commence their meetings. This is why we took a lot of time in haggling over these issues, and we are starting after 12. So once again, my apologies to all of you. We are grateful for your patience, your tolerance, and for your understanding. We will move straight away to item 4, correction of votes and proceedings and official report. We start with the correction of votes and proceedings of Monday, 5th December 2022. Page 1, page 2, page 3, Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Yes, Honorable Ablakwa.
I'm grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, please, at page 19, item number XII. The name is Miss Bella Ashiagbo. It should be ASHIAGBOR. The G has been left out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Table office, kindly take note of the spelling of the name. Page 20. Yes, please.
Honourable Speaker, page 20, Roman numeral XXII should be Mrs. Atre Frimpong Menu, not Mr. Thank you.
Table office, the name is Mrs., not Mr. Kindly take note. Page 21. Page 2. Page 23. Page 24. Page 25. Page 26. Honorable members, in the absence of any further corrections, the votes and proceedings of the 24th sitting held on Monday, 5th December 2022 are hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. I don't have a copy of any official report of the House, and so we move straight away to item 5, unless otherwise guided.
Speaker, as was agreed and you rightly announced, the two leaders will conclude with the debate. But just to notify colleagues that we have some outstanding motions that are due to be taken by the Finance Committee, are related appropriately with the ranking member and the chair. So after the conclusion, we will proceed to take those motions. So I just to notify the House. So I guess we are ready to
So, honorable members, will proceed to public business. At the commencement of public business, item 7, conclusion of debate. And as stated earlier on, the leaders will have their say today. We will start with the minority leader. 45 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the motion that this House approves the budget statement for the 2023 financial year. And in doing so, Mr. Speaker, to thank you for the contribution. Mr. Speaker, to say that our country, Ghana, is in crisis, an economic crisis, a deep crisis, is an understatement. Indeed, President Nana Addo Dankwa himself, on Sunday, 30th October 2022, addressed the nation. The President said, and I quote, "We are in crisis. I do not exaggerate when I say so." Mr. Speaker, what he failed to add was to take responsibility for leading this country into this economic turmoil, economic mess, and economic crisis. President Nana Addo Dankwa must gather courage, full responsibility for how incompetently he and his men, in particular his Minister of Finance, have so mismanaged the Ghanaian economy. Mr. Speaker, to paraphrase him further, he said, and I quote, "The whole world has been taken aback by the speed with which inflation has eaten away people's incomes. Economies big and small have experienced over this year alone the highest rise in cost of living over a generation, the highest rise in government borrowing in over 50 years. Mr. Speaker, he has borrowed more than any other president under the Fourth Republic. President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC between 2013 and 2016 is reported to have borrowed in the region of $3.5 billion US. Mr. Speaker, President Nana Addo Dankwa and his MPP within this short period have borrowed $11 billion US. And therefore, the crisis we are in today is the result of irresponsible, reckless borrowing which has not gone in to build infrastructure to spur our economy for growth. Mr. Speaker, as I listened to the Minister for Finance, I came to the conclusion the light at the end of the tunnel has been turned off, and turned off on the Ghanaian economy. Mr. Speaker, before I go further, in this budget alone, Mr. Speaker, before they assumed the reins of power in 2017, talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. They said that when they come, they will manage this economy well. Mr. Speaker, in their 2016 manifesto, the headline was "From taxation to production." Today, from production to taxation. Talk is cheap. Minister for Finance, in your budget for 2023, you are not kind to the Ghanaian people. Not kind at all. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, Ghanaians have no Christmas and should not expect Christmas this December 2022. In this budget, Mr. Speaker, the minister is introducing 24 tax measures. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to state them for the record. He wants to reintroduce road tolls. How much we have lost from road tolls between 2022-23, who must be held responsible for it? You. Because you came and said you will do away with road tolls and that e-levy will compensate for it. You are reintroducing road tolls. We told you so. This gallant NDC minority, we said you will be back to road tolls because you need the revenue from road tolls and you need road tolls in order for the private sector to participate in the building of build, operate, transfer infrastructure. But at least some laws have been made and occasioned by your misjudgment in doing away with it. Mr. Speaker, one of the major taxes introduced in this budget is a VAT of 2.5% increase. And Mr. Speaker, without going further, we in the NDC minority group will fiercely resist and fight the imposition of this additional tax on Ghanaians and Ghanaian businesses because, Mr. Speaker, it will only exacerbate and increase the hardships they are already going through. It will increase the cost of doing business for many Ghanaians and it will make it difficult for ordinary Ghanaians to cope. Mr. Speaker, is it not ironic that under President Nana Addo Dankwa and Minister Ken Ofori-Atta today, we are told that the minimum wage is 14.8 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, and a loaf of bread is 25 Ghana cedis. So it means you must work for 2 days in order to be able to afford a loaf of bread in Ghana under their watch. You have a minimum wage of 14.8 Ghana cedis and you have a loaf of bread buying for 25 Ghana cedis in Nana Addo Dankwa's government. Mr. Speaker, still back to VAT. 2.5% VAT. Mr. Speaker, where is morality in this country? In 1995, President Nana Addo Dankwa led Ghanaians opposing VAT and saying it was not a good tax measure. Has he any moral right to ask this august house to help him increase VAT by 2.5%? If he wants, then he owe Ghanaians an apology, saying that he was misled and misguided in 1995 when the NDC group sought to introduce this wedding tax. At least for today, VAT accounts for 15 billion every other year. In the 2023 budget, you estimate getting 23.9 billion. Yet you chastise and bastardize the NDC that VAT was not good. Today, morality and reality check. You want an increase in VAT of 2.5%. You have a difficulty convincing us to support you because we want to hold the moral high ground that it was immoral at the time, as you said, and therefore it will be immoral for us to support you to increase VAT by 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, in this budget of 2023, the minister is increasing personal income tax by 35%. So if you earn your income, he's wading into it to take 35% home. The workers are asking, if you take 35% home, then they live on what? What will they live on? Maybe an additional adjustment of the income threshold will have to be undertaken. Other than that, Mr. Speaker, it will only be in Ghana that persons are paying more income tax than corporate tax. How can this happen? Competent hands, competent taxes, 35% tax. Mr. Speaker, vehicle income tax to be reviewed and increased. And Mr. Speaker, on the 2.5% value added tax, our concern is that if you do an adjustment of it on the 15% VAT, cumulatively you are likely to increase VAT to 21.9%. Because there's already 2.5% national health insurance levy, 2.5% GET fund levy. So cumulatively, Ghanaians will be paying 2.5% value added tax. Even the input credit that, for instance, pharmaceuticals and others had advantage to deduct it, they will be denied that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, that brings us close only to Morocco and another country which is charging 20% VAT. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is the submission of the minority group that from the 2.5% VAT, you are likely to rake in about 2.4 to 2.8 billion Ghana cedis. Go and cut expenditure somewhere by 2.4 billion and don't burden Ghanaians with any additional 2.5%. So go back to your office of government machinery and then reduce the tax rate there. Mr. Speaker, we have been that we should blame COVID and blame exogenous factors. Very soon we'll blame the Queen's death on the poor performance of the Ghanaian economy. They are quick. And Mr. Speaker, their manifesto in 2016, they said they wanted to end the suffering of Ghanaians. You have succeeded in increasing the suffering of Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, on Friday, because it was a holiday, I prayed Juma in Tamale. And I was very interested in the Hutuba, the sermon of the Imam Habib, when he said in Dagbani, he was saying a prayer for the president and the minister. He said in Dagbani, Tungbanma Mia, and I add my own, the Mia, gum. The Speaker, how I wish I could translate that in Dagari for you. But for the Twi people, it will look like Kromne Ayeshi. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance is here. You have led this country onto a path of unsustainable debt. Our debt is unsustainable. And to remind you, you said so in paragraph 144 and paragraph 174 of your budget statement. Mr. Speaker, if you read from 143 to 146, where you talk about government conducted a debt sustainability analysis, our country is still not solved to evaluate the solvency and liquidity status of the country's total public debt. The results of the analysis revealed that Ghana's debt carrying capacity is rated moderate and the overall risk rating is characterized in your words, high risk of debt distress. Mr. Speaker, so who has led us there? He overborrowed and have led this country into a high debt risk country, and therefore we cannot sustain our debt. Mr. Speaker, with this, may I refer you to paragraph 127, 128, and 129 of the budget statement. And Minister, on this matter, the minority is demanding further and better particulars on the state of Ghana's indebtedness. Mr. Speaker, in paragraph 127, the minister quote says, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, provisional debt data as at end September 2022 show a significant increase in Ghana's public debt stock, largely due to exogenous factors, which have direct impact on the Ghanaian economy. But Mr. Speaker, my interest is in paragraph 128. He said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, gross total public debt amounted to 467.3 billion. That's 48.8 billion US dollars. So, Mr. Speaker, I start to capture the paragraph 127, 128, 129. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm picking from the words of the minister, and we think that he has not reported accurately to this parliament and to the people of Ghana on our outstanding debt stock. Mr. Speaker, if you take the figure of 48.8 billion Ghana cedis, multiplied by the Bank of Ghana exchange rate today, 13.1, you don't get the number he has reported there as 467 billion, 467.3 billion. So, Mr. Speaker, there is something wrong with paragraph 128. If you have a debt quoted in US dollars of 48.8 billion, and you choose to multiply that by 9.5 Ghana cedis, you are reporting for the period September. You are not going to pay this debt in September. You'll be paying it either this December or forward-looking into January, February, into 2023. Therefore, the prevailing exchange rate to measure a real accurate public debt is a $48.8 billion multiplied by 13 Ghana cedis. I'll forgive you the 0.11. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm challenging. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleading.
There's too much movement. Kindly resume your seats. Yes, Minority Leader, continue.
Mr. Speaker, I'm asking every member of Parliament in this chamber, maybe with the exception of Mr. Speaker, to pick your phones and go to calculator column and multiply $48 times 13 Ghana cedis and ask yourself whether the minister have reported accurately to this Parliament on his outstanding debt. The answer is no. And each of you, I'm happy to hear your answers, because he is using 9.5 Ghana cedis in September. No, he will not be paying the debt at the September rate. Honorable Patrick, if I ask you to mention it, they will call you names. The Honorable Esiama, have you multiplied 4.8 times 8 times 13? Mr. Speaker, that gives us the actual debt burden of our country. Over 600 billion Ghana cedis. So when you report 400 billion, you are putting this house in a difficulty as to how much we should approve for you for purpose of debt service. We need accuracy. And Mr. Speaker, apart from that, the minister himself, in his opening paragraph, stated that because of forex losses alone, debt service increased by 93 billion. So he agrees with my assumptions. How did he get this 93 billion that he quotes in his budget statement, Mr. Speaker? It means he multiplied it by the existing exchange rate. So we are saying that for this Parliament to accurately support him to service debt, we need to know the actual debt. And the 48 billion is as of September. Probably at the end of December, it may be 50 billion US dollars multiplied at the exchange rate. So, Mr. Speaker, when this minority says that this minister have contributed to our crisis, he must accept so. Then, Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the morning, we listened to the Minister for Finance announce to the Ghanaian public, announce to businesses and investors, and in particular our financial institutions, about called debt restructuring or debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, he said so yesterday, 5th December. How come, Minister, to quote you, I listened to you on TV3, you stated that the contours, unquote, the contours of this debt restructuring, how come you didn't present the contours to this Parliament? You ought to have presented the contours of the debt restructuring, because we are the representatives of the people. You cannot impose it on them. It is public debt, not your debt, not personal debt. It's the debt for the people of Ghana. Therefore, if you come to Parliament and you will not fully disclose the contours of your debt exchange, Mr. Speaker, we ask the fundamental questions: were the financial institutions adequately consulted? Did you get their buy-in? Did you get the buy-in of bond holders? You have said that individuals will not be affected, but don't forget, Minister, that individuals will suffer, because individuals normally buy the bonds through institutions. No individual goes straight to the market. The institutions do so on their behalf, and therefore those individuals will suffer it. Mr. Speaker, you hinted at debt restructuring in paragraph 136 of the budget statement. The minister alluded to the decision of the rating agencies to continuously downgrade Ghana, premised on increased likelihood that Ghana will pursue a debt restructuring. Mr. Speaker, what the minister succeeded in doing yesterday was to tell the whole world and the people of Ghana that I'm in default of servicing my domestic debt, and I will soon be in default of servicing my external debt, and asking that 137 billion be ring-fenced to help him out of this imminent crisis. Mr. Speaker, the banks are saying no, because, Mr. Speaker, our pensions cannot, and Minister, we repeat that this group on this side will not accept pensions being affected by any debt restructuring effort. We cherish the old age and social security of Ghanaian pensioners, and they have every right to the benefit of their sacrifice, their savings and investment on their pensions, and therefore no haircut should be extended to affect pensions. Therefore, when you bring any specific legislation on it, we will carefully monitor to protect pensions. Mr. Speaker, even organized labor is talking about it. We want to be consistent with this matter. Isn't it strange that the details of the major policies such as debt restructuring will be missing from the budget statement? How come that you won't present this in the budget? You go conveniently to a Monday, 5th December, to announce the contours of a debt restructuring. We are the best people to interrogate what your debt restructuring contains. Mr. Speaker, he stated that this request is consistent with the terms and conditions of the IMF program. As for IMF, Mr. Speaker, we were told, and Mr. Speaker, I raised a fundamental issue that this country is at crossroads. And Mr. Speaker, the electorate and the Ghanaian public are beginning to get suspicious even of this House Parliament, that we are not doing enough, we are not promoting their interests, we are not safeguarding the interests of the electorate and the Ghanaian people, and that this Parliament have reduced itself into a clearinghouse for executive embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, we have to wake up and sit up to it under your guidance. Because the Ghanaian public is saying, even if you say Nana Akufo-Addo and Ken Ofori-Atta overborrowed, this deny complicity, because under Article 181, we approve all those loans here. And therefore, Parliament must begin to be more assertive and more stronger to hold the executive and the Minister for Finance accountable to this august House. Mr. Speaker, other than that, there will be continuous erosion of public faith and public confidence in the institution of Parliament. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Finance will have to come back to this House. For instance, on external debt, assuming you come to share the contours with us, will it require legislation? If it requires legislation, wouldn't that offend Article 207 of the Constitution, retroactive legislation? Because, Mr. Speaker, what this minister is doing is simply breaking contracts. You are breaking contracts with people who bought domestic bonds, and you'll be breaking contracts with people who have external bonds by your default. So that means that you will have to come to Parliament for some legal backing. How are we going to give you that backing? And Mr. Speaker, as we do our arithmetic, about 60% of your borrowing are not bilateral. And therefore, if you want the debt to be sustainable, the Ghanaian financial sector, Labour, TUC, and this minority group, we are saying no to your debt restructuring initiative. And we are saying that consult more, engage more, involve external creditors more, get their buy-in more, and come to this august House for us to analyze. Because we believe that you may have to come under Article 1815 of the Constitution. Many of them will constitute international economic transactions. And many of them, when you came to this House, we gave you approval of the laws pursuant to Article 181 of the Constitution, which emphasizes the terms and conditions of the laws. Any breach, any changes to the terms and conditions amounts to a breach of the provisions of our Constitution. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I needn't talk about how much inflation is eating the real income of Ghanaians. I needn't talk about how much the depreciation of the cedi, almost over 50% in the last 1 year. But Mr. Speaker, what that means for businesses is a lot. And therefore, many businesses are laying off workers because they simply cannot function. Mr. Speaker, this morning, whilst we finished conclave with you, I was invited on your behalf to receive a petition from Single Man Contractors Association, SMCA. They say they number about 3,600 contractors. They do the grass cutting and the weed by the roadside. Just this morning, they say they have not been paid since 2019. 19 unpaid, 2020 unpaid, 21 unpaid, 22 unpaid. How do you expect single main contractors to survive? In fact, one of them added to the hearing of the Honorable Habib that many of them are dying. So, Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Finance knows that he owes contractors. He owes road contractors. He owes suppliers. He owes statutory funds. He must honor his obligations, particularly to the contractor. Mr. Speaker, what is more worrying is that a contractor who was awarded a contract in 2019 or 2021, who has not completed work, who bought a ton of iron rod for 5,000, is today buying the same iron rod for 11,000. The costs have doubled. Will the state accept responsibility for an upward adjustment of more than 50 to 100% of construction costs? The danger, Mr. Speaker, that poses is that many of the projects that were initiated will remain uncompleted in the coming years, and the money so far spent on them will be wasteful. It means they won't get money to go back to site to be able to complete their jobs. You cannot blame them because you have not paid those contractors. Mr. Speaker, let me now come to a matter which is of interest to me in my previous role as Minister for Employment and Labor. And Mr. Speaker, it's about the compensation budget in this 2023 budget estimates. You are negotiating. Your negotiation with organized labor, public sector workers is inconclusive. They have put on the table 65%. You are still hovering around 18%. Mr. Speaker, best practice everywhere in the world is for you to use inflation, the average rate of it in a year, to compute how much compensation adjustment you can make. Now, assuming that you are able to give labor 20%, it is just 50% of the rate of inflation. What will happen to the value of their income? What will happen to the value of their real income? But Mr. Speaker, on this one, we are calling for understanding from TUC and organized labor. Maybe Omo Minister no government no mobile. And listen, they should look at you as mobile. But Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that the minimum wage today is 14.8 Ghana cedis. A loaf of bread is 25 Ghana cedis. So you have to work for 2 days to be able to afford a loaf of bread. Mr. Speaker, all in the name of competent managers of the economy. This is where you have taken the Ghanaian economy to. Mr. Speaker, our fear is that into 2023, government must do everything possible to keep the industrial peace and harmony of our country by honoring aspects or some of the demands of organized labor, including it. Mr. Speaker, in this room, on health, we're here when the President, as part of his Sunday COVID speeches, promised that he was going to build 111 hospitals, referred to as Agenda 111, in 101 districts, 7 regional hospitals, 3 psychiatric hospitals. And that work has commenced on 89 of the 101 district hospitals. Mr. Speaker, I've asked our Committee on Health that when you are reporting to this House on the budget for health, bring us evidence that work have started indeed at 89 sites. It is not so. You just gave contractors money for mobilization. Some of them have run away. They have not even visited sites. Work have not commenced. Over 1.3 billion on this initiative. Mr. Speaker, we in the minority demand accountability and nothing more. All the money spent on Agenda 111, come and show us, Mr. Speaker. You see, finally, you have this television. Come and show us where work started, the state of work, 20%, 30%, on all which contractors are assigned. Then, Mr. Speaker, I come to the vexed issue of the minister allocation for a national cathedral. Now, we have been told that the national cathedral is under the Ministry of Tourism. So we assume that ownership of the cathedral will be the state, not the church. A contradiction. The state, not the church. That is a major contradiction. That a church will run under the supervision of a ministry is repugnant to the provisions of our Constitution on fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. Let this project be led and owned by the church and not the state. Mr. Speaker, we are not against the principle. What we are against is, how can you now say that you have allocated 80 million for cathedral? In the last budget, we were told that it emerged from contingency vote. So at least a motion of censure have served a purpose. Now he is reporting that give me approval to spend 80 million on a cathedral. We will do so because, Mr. Speaker, we must keep the unity of this country. Ghana is rated and respected as one of the few countries where religious tolerance and religious coexistence is high. But, Mr. Speaker, how can you say that I'm building a cathedral of $400 million at the instance of the state in these trying times? So the question we are asking is the construction of a cathedral, when you cannot buy textbooks for people, your priority? If it is your priority, it is not the priority of this group here. But we support the principle that you may want to support a church to have an edifice of a cathedral. But focus, when children cannot afford to have even proper meals under your free senior high school and other things, you want to spend $400 million. One, the $400 million, how was it determined? We demand value for money. Procurement, how was it undertaken? We demand openness and transparency when it comes to that. Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to the minister said something very indicative when he said that there will be no new bureaucracies, no new institutions into 2023. And Mr. Speaker, I'm asking, the development authorities you came here and created, they are also building toilets and building school blocks. What is the Ministry of Local Government doing? That you think that the Ministry of Local Government cannot build water systems, cannot build schools, cannot build hospitals? It must be done by development authorities. So, Mr. Speaker, it is the contention of this size of the House that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo must take the moral high to reduce the size of government. And he must collapse many of these institutions into their mother ministries. All the development authorities can run under the Ministry of Local Government. The Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture can run under the Ministry for Agriculture. The Ministry for Aviation can under the Ministry of Transport. Let him reduce the size of government and make savings for the Ghanaian people. The AIDS Commission can run under the Ministry of Health. You don't need it under Office of Government Machinery. National Identification Authority, we are told, is under the Minister for Interior. And Mr. Speaker, that leads me to, you see now, the Minister is very quiet and very silent on it. Now, $1 million per constituency, Yamutu. $1 million per constituency. Where is it? You promised the people of Ghana that in every year, you know why he has run away from $1 million one constituency? Because the depreciation of the cedi imposes more burden financially on him to honor that promise. And then you ended up building KVIP toilets in constituencies and said you are providing $1 million. Let any member of parliament stand up and show that in the last 6 years of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, $1 million have entered his constituency in pursuit of the Infrastructure for Development Initiative. Obiamua, the media, you are invited to join me to visit his constituency. We will visit those things. Mr. Speaker, what remains ironical and probably paradoxical for many Ghanaians is now the promise by President Nana Addo Dankwa and his Minister of Finance that give me 2.5 years, I'll do better. What did you do with 6 years? That you now want us to give you do better. What did you do with your 6 years? And you want us to believe you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then I come to the matter of e-levy. Our position on e-levy remains unchanged. We said that it was a disincentive to our quest to build a cashless economy. We should take advantage of ICT and mobile infrastructure to accelerate our development and to mainstream ICT in all aspects of our national life. Mr. Speaker, they are talking about bringing the e-levy threshold from 1.5% to 1% with no exemptions, and they still care for ordinary people. We don't support it, but it brings you some revenue. So at least provide for a threshold of 300 Ghana cedis for ordinary people. And therefore, when you bring the bill, we will insist that some provision is made for the threshold, even though in principle we do not support it. I saw the Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance argue here strongly, mentioning Haruna Idrisu. Mr. Speaker, I never ever on this floor said that we were for 1% e-levy at 500 threshold. I did. But I did at negotiations at the 12th floor. When I said 11th floor, leader reminds me. So Abena, if you are talking, Honorable Abena, if you are talking about, Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance, if you are talking about, it was not in this chamber, not on this floor of Parliament, not an official position of this minority. It was part of our negotiations on matters relating to Ejepa and many other things that we protested, that I made an offer on the table that can't you allow e-levy at 1% at the threshold of 500 Ghana. Then, Mr. Speaker, your able second deputy speaker, Honorable Siama, was sitting by my right. So he tapped my leg and said, leader, it was through Hododo in tree that it was too high. And I said, Mr. Speaker, bravo man, what do you have to offer? At that time, you in the Ministry of Finance boycotted and rejected the minority offer, and that gave mobility to our offer. So our offer died on the table. So to turn around and want to blame this minority for your failing e-levy, Minister, take responsibility. E-levy, you got your projections wrong. And don't blame this poor minority. You got it wrong. You even projected 6.9 billion as outcome for e-levy. You are in the region of 500 million. So probably, if you want my education on e-levy, Mr. Speaker, I'm ready to offer it. If you recall, I said that the incidence of e-levy was 3.75%. If you added 1.75%, so there was an existing 2%. And I thought that 2%, the state could share it with the telecos. That is why I said 1%. Let them keep the cash in and you keep the cash out. Because don't forget, they were charging it at limited threshold, 5,010 Ghana cedi. Now you've opened the envelope for them to charge everybody. So at the transactional level, you are better off asking for the 1% using your regulator. I've been former minister for communication. I'm sure even mobile money, I can take credit that I was part of those who led its introduction, learning from Kenya, M-Pesa, into Ghana. So what you did was to create an opportunity for the significant market shareholder to profit from e-levy and not the state or the government. You simply ignored it. Mr. Speaker, the policies and reforms announced in this budget are simply just not enough. And it is the demand of this group that there must be major expenditure cuts in your budget. That's why some of your tax handle will suffer in our hands. For instance, 1.4 billion allocation for contingency votes. Mr. Speaker, contingency. He wants 1.4 billion. We shouldn't give him that. We should cut it. So we will cut it. We will cut it. Yes. 1.4 billion.
Honorable Minority Leader, you have 5 more minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I will stay within time. Then there is 10 million allocated for Ministry of Defense, for Defense Advisory Services. To do what? Take that one too off and go and give it to school feeding. Then, Mr. Speaker, Office of Government Machinery, you are seeking to increase the staff strength from 1,500 to 3,681. You are ballooning and wanting to blow the numbers at the Flagstaff House. Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance, go to page 230 of your budget statement. I brilliantly enjoyed the budget debates. And the Honorable Atachia, Chairman of the Energy Committee, was emphatic. I want to remind you today that that emphasis you place is a projection into the future and will hold the minister and you accountable. You said that it's $12 billion US. So, December 31st, 2023, Mr. Speaker, we will ask the minister to account to us the savings of $12 billion US of payments to IPPs. We will. Chief, it is a projection into the future. But we are saying that independent power producers whose contracts have expired, why do you want to negotiate with them? The contract have expired. Leave it there. Why do you want to renegotiate with them? Then, Mr. Speaker, I cannot conclude without raising the vexed issue of the Bank of Ghana financing government. Is reported in this budget 33 billion, is reported to increase to 41 billion by end of year. Minister, that offense of the Bank of Ghana Act 2002, Act 612, as amended, you are supposed to get financing of up to 5% of previous government revenue. So if you go and take 19 billion from Bank of Ghana, 24 billion from Bank of Ghana, you are in breach of the law. And we are inviting you to come back to Parliament. We can say with the governor to regularize that expenditure. That is not acceptable. And you are better managers of the economy. We didn't borrow this excessively from Bank of Ghana. If President Mahama and the NDC did as he then was, would have been better off in delivering more infrastructure to you, like we did with Terminal 3. Now, Speaker, the cocoa sector, cocoa contractors, road contractors on coal, you owe them 14 billion. You are saying that you pay them over a period of time. Many of them will survive. It's just like your haircut on bonds. Many people will survive your extension to 2027, 2033 to be able to receive it. So, Mr. Speaker, there is freeze on public sector employment. I hope that it doesn't affect teachers, nurses, and doctors that we need most. Mr. Speaker, let me therefore conclude that we know and we recognize that our country is in crisis, an economic crisis, a crisis precipitated by your incompetence and mismanagement of the economy, your excessive and irresponsible borrowing from 120 billion to over 500 billion in 6 years, exceeding and declaring Ghana a debt, high-risk debt distressed country. So, Mr. Speaker, ordinarily, this is the budget we should have stood strong with the Ghanaian people. So we say no to VAT, no to your debt exchange regime, no to your 2.5% VAT increase, but to opt for expenditure cap. But Mr. Speaker,
1 minute left. 1 minute.
They are praying that this budget fails, and they blame us and blame Ghanaians. Take your failing budget. You have failed Ghanaians. Be mindful of rising costs of living. You have exacerbated hardships and poverty, and accept responsibility for it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it's now the turn of the majority leader. 45 minutes. Majority leader, you can start now.
Mr. Speaker, just to entreat my colleagues to bear with me. I'm not in the best of shapes this morning, so to plead with them to bear with me. But Mr. Speaker, just to begin with a response to all what my colleague has said. He says to us, the NDC are better managers of the economy. The Speaker, just to tell him about the adage, the Akan adage, which runs, Yaria, a ball, kokosechi, a man, tihututu yeno. A ball, kwa de bia, and can see him. The Speaker, it translates that the sickness that befell the vulture, which culminated in the hair loss, if it had afflicted the crow would have been buried. The Speaker, the The minority leader has asserted that government's debt situation now is the worst ever. Speaker, again, patented untruth. In 2000, the debt to GDP was 140%. 2000. Go and check your 2001 budget statement. Mr. Speaker, talk to facts. Mr. Speaker, ours is globally induced. Never in our history have we had this downscaling of productivity, no thanks to COVID. Mr. Speaker, in 2000, the debt stock of this country was 9.2 billion. At the time the NDC was leaving, it had grown to 122 billion. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the percentage increase that happened to our debt stock at the instance of the NDC was 1,229%. We have the courage to talk to debt stock in this country. The Speaker, the debt stock, yes, 450 billion, yes, but the increase is 268%, as against your 1,229%. You have the courage to talk to management of the economy. Mr. Speaker, my colleague spoke eloquently about challenging the 2.5% increase in the VAT. That is an issue that he has raised. But as we all do know, and he himself ended on that note, that the economy is not in the best of shapes. And yet we need to continue the development of roads. About 25% of questions that are asked in this chamber relate to roads. Some roads have been begun, and the intent is to ensure that they don't deteriorate. They are not left unattended to. So the 2.5% increase in the VAT, you have been told, primarily is going to be used for road construction. If you don't want your roads to be constructed, tell us that you don't want your roads to be constructed. Mr. Speaker, the rates of the dollar, 2009, 1 cedi, 10 pesos to $1. 2016, it had escalated to 4 cedis, 35 pesos. The increase was 300%. Today, yes, it's gone bad, but the increase from 4.35 to 13.5% that we're experiencing now is 220%. Again, Mr. Speaker, speak to the truth. In spite of the unprecedented shocks, both internal and external, head to head, the MPP has proven to be better managers of this economy. The evidence is clear. Mr. Speaker, just to thank you very much for the opportunity to once again conclude on the debate on the budget statement and economic policy of Government of Ghana for the 2023 financial year, which was presented to Parliament on Thursday, the 24th of November, 2022, by Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, the Minister responsible for Finance. Mr. Speaker, but before I proceed, I guess it's important to quickly respond to a paramount matter raised by the minority leader on the very day of the presentation of the budget. Mr. Speaker, that matter was reiterated by the spokesperson on finance for the minority. It has to do with the absence from Parliament that day, and a meal was made of it. Except, of course, the meal was very unwholesome. But they persisted in serving the unwholesome meal to Ghanaians. The Constitution provides in Article 179, Clause 1, and I quote, "The President shall cause to be prepared and laid before Parliament at least 1 month before the end of the year estimates of revenues and expenditure of the government of Ghana for the following financial year. The president causes the budget to be prepared. He doesn't do the preparation himself. And again, the president causes it to be laid in the House. He doesn't do it himself. The Speaker, in the lead up to the presentation, the preparation and indeed the presentation of the budget, the president was outside this country. The vice president had assumed the office of the president as the acting president, and he couldn't therefore have accompanied the finance minister to this chamber. Mr. Speaker, this really is fundamental, and I thought our colleagues would appreciate this. But as usual, they wouldn't understand, and they will inflict their own influence on Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, increasingly these days, when the minority group discuss the current economic challenges, they are always quick to tag along the vice president as the chairman of the economic management team of the cabinet. Mr. Speaker, the President Mills, after 2011, the economy experienced a downswing. GDP growth rate declined from 14.4 in 2010 to 9.5% in 2011. President Mahama was the vice president. He was the chairman of the team. Into 2012, GDP swung down again. Mr. Speaker, the vice president was the chairman of the economic management team. Nobody roped him in. The reason is that the finance minister does the preparation, manages the economy for and on behalf of the president, not the vice president. The Speaker, in the cabinet setup, the committee systems, the vice president is not the chairman of the economic committee. My colleague knows that. Vice presidents have never been. And yet, within the cabinet setup, in fact, I should tell you that the economic management team has no constitutional basis in the system. So when people talk about this, it is because they just want to give the vice president a bad name, like the proverbial dog, and hang it. Mr. Speaker, and I'll come to that. And then we had Major Adongo, who referred to the vice president as the Maguire of the Nana Addo team. The Speaker, Maguire, in the current World Cup, he has proven to be the sweeper at the back. I don't know the football in the Honorable Adongo, but if his analysis of the performance of Maguire is correct, and indeed that is what he shares, his analysis of economics with the NDC, then we're in trouble. The NDC is in trouble because his own vision about football is impaired. His impaired vision. In fact, his eyes, he suffers from cataracts in one eye and glaucoma in the other eye. And that is why his prowess is suspect. Mr. Speaker, so you should be careful that you don't allow people with no track record to lead you astray. Mr. Speaker, so why this spirited heavens must come down descend on the vice president? Alaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has already said the answer is obvious. Give a dog a bad name and hang it. The lion must be tamed by all means, fair or foul, more foul than fair. K.K. Kabobo was very right when he said in his system, Onyamia Humo, NDC, Onyamia Humo. Mr. Speaker, the president, through his finance minister, was candid with us, and indeed the country, when he came to present his budget. Mr. Speaker, the finance minister was candid with the country that the budget had been prepared amidst a highly uncertain economic environment, including, and he mentioned, and I quote, rapidly deteriorating global economic conditions challenging domestic environment characterized by high exchange rates, depreciation, high inflation, high interest rates, unsustainable debt burden, significant fiscal stress, and external sector shocks. Continuing, the minister said, and I'm quoting again, the budget was prepared additionally within the context of 1, ongoing IMF program negotiations, and 2, debt treatment as part of measures to restore debt sustainability. He also updated this country on the IMF program and debt operations. Mr. Speaker, it is significant the level of transparency and accountability that was indeed injected into the crafting of the 2023 budget. That is what the House has been yearning for, and that is what is behind the introduction of the budget bill to involve Parliament, the people's representatives, in the fashioning of national budgets in order to achieve the desired national growth and growth of the living conditions of the masses in a very sustainable manner. Mr. Speaker, this explains why this year, for the first time in the history of the Fourth Republic, a finance minister engaged the leadership of Parliament and indeed some selected parliamentary committees to brief them on the state of the economy, the engagement with the IMF, and the broad strokes of the budget that at the time was being fashioned out. The members who were present spoke candidly about their own expectations and the expectations of the Ghanaian public. One hopes that this encounter begun by the minister would mark a new beginning in the executive parliament discourse in the lead-up to the preparations and indeed presentation of national budgets. In a very candid manner, the minister took the House through the broad contours of the IMF program, including the medium-term macro framework, the continuance of the negotiations towards the achievement of the staff-level agreement by the end of 2022. The Speaker, the minister additionally informed Ghanaians about the IMF program and the debt operations that my colleague related to as part of the measures to ensure debt sustainability. The debt operations are two-pronged: domestic debt operations and external debt operations. The combined effect of these operations will lead to the definition of priorities for the 2023 budgets. The Speaker and the Minister spoke about these priorities. That the priorities for the 2023 are the following. First, restoring macroeconomic stability with a view to restoring fiscal and debt sustainability. 2, pursue key structural reforms to improve public finance management, productivity, and innovation to support durable and inclusive growth. 3, he said, the priority is to address energy sector issues, optimization of domestic revenue mobilization, protect social intervention programs to protect the poor and the vulnerable. And 6, he informed us to pursue key interventions in the real sector, agriculture, industry, and services to enhance domestic productive capacity and improve competitiveness towards the production of value-added exports and import substitution products. The Speaker, the Minister ran us through the key macroeconomic considerations for 2023, and I want to quote what he said. The 2022 GDP has been revised to 3.6%, and the 2023 target now is 2.7%, reflecting the impact of fiscal adjustments and debt treatment. Inflation is expected to moderate from current levels to 20.9% next year. Because, Mr. Speaker, we'll admit that where we are, the levels of inflation really unbearable. The exchange rate depreciation is expected to dip with the inflows from the IMF and other development partners and the impact of fiscal adjustments and debt treatment. The fiscal deficit and primary deficit will be reduced in 2023 due to the impact of fiscal adjustments and the debt operations. Mr. Speaker, the Minister informed that the gross international reserves at 10 billion as of September 2021 and not less than $4.9 months of import cover, and which scaled down to about 6.9 billion as at September 2022, are expected to improve on account of the IMF and other development partners' inflows. The Speaker, he then went on to speak about revenue measures. The revenue measures, the key ones to provide self-sufficiency includes: 1, revision of income-based taxes, removal of selected VAT exemptions, revision of excise taxes for selected items, complete removal of discounts on benchmark values, undertake e-levy reforms to close loopholes, leakages, and improve patronage and enhance yields. And 6, to implement the unified property rate collection, convert the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy to Growth and Sustainability Levy to rope in all entities. 8, to scale up the implementation of VAT e-invoicing system, that is the digitalization system, to enhance compliance. The e-levy reformation to yield additional revenue, and 10, finally, to increase the VAT rate from 12.5 to 14.5, from 12.5 to 14.5%. The Speaker, growing up, the local councils at the time had a way to collect property rates, and the House was paid. The 2020 population ANHOC census revealed that there are 8.5 million houses in Ghana. If on the average house pays 500 cedis per year, the equivalent of about $35, the revenue yield will be up to 4.25 billion. Mr. Speaker, if the average is 1,500, that's the equivalent of, if the average is 750, that's the equivalent of $50, it will yield an amount of 6.375 billion. And if the average is 1,000, it will yield about 8.5 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, property, as we know, is assessed by its location, its closeness to the city center, the class of the community where it is, and hence the cost of the land, the services provided, including roads, water, electricity, telephone, and now internet services, the design of the property, the integrity of the structure, etc. The Speaker, we have been told just 4 days ago that Accra is rated the 9th richest city in Africa. There are houses in Accra. There are houses in Accra here, which will go for nothing less than about $4 million, or the equivalent of about 50 million Ghana cedis. Such property could attract a rate of not less than 20,000 per year. That's about 1,300, the equivalent of $1,300. The district assemblies would have resources to develop their districts if indeed we go on this trajectory. The Speaker, my colleague, the minority leader, related to the road tolls, and I agree that it should be brought back. It was taken off last year. And one of the reasons was abuse and corruption at the booths. Nationwide, the tolls were yielding about 72 million Ghana cedis. That's per year. Estimates were that they could have had raked in a minimum of 200 million if they were properly managed. Mr. Speaker, but the country was earning just about a third of the potential yield. The way to go is electronic books. Now, if on the average, vehicles should pay about 5 cedis, which is about 35 cents now, and we introduce electronic devices, we should be able to rake in a minimum of 1 billion Ghana cedis from the road tolls alone. And Mr. Speaker, we should go back to that as one of the prime revenue measures. At the same time, the minister also related to a 12-point expenditure measures that have been introduced. First, to reduce the threshold of the earmark funds from 25% of tax revenue to 17.5% of tax revenue. raise the leave payment per beneficiary household from the current 45 Ghana cedis per month and increase the number of beneficiaries from 344,185 households. It is to protect the very vulnerable. The Speaker, the third matter that he raised is to increase the school feeding caterer payment rate from the current 1 cedi per child to 1 cedi 20 pesos. How I wish that perhaps we could increase it to at least 130 or 1 cedi 40 pesos or 1 cedi 50 pesos. The minister also promised to eliminate, that is the budget, promises to eliminate the subsidy on residual fuel oil and increase the price of premise fuel to reflect market prices. They intend to continue the 30% cut in the salaries of the executive. I know these are challenging times for us, Mr. Speaker, and I know the demand on members of parliament to effect payments to the vulnerable in their constituencies has gone up significantly, perhaps about 100%. But Mr. Speaker, perhaps as members of parliament, just as the executives have done, maybe we could also, even though there are difficult periods for all of us, we could also utilize the opportunity and also show some example by sacrificing anything between 10 and 15% of our salaries to demonstrate to fellow Ghanaians that we are with them in these difficult moments. Mr. Speaker, we could utilize the youth to build, say, a toilet facility in a designated location every month. And that would be the contribution or the sacrifices that members of parliament will be making. Government is minded to review the flagship projects in order to achieve greater value for money. Government proposes to place a cap on salary adjustments by state-owned enterprises and tie it to the single spine salary structure. Some chief executives and managing directors of some state enterprises earn very outrageous emoluments. And I think that we need to be very practical about these matters. The Speaker, the minority leader related to negotiation of public sector wages, I think it's significant. And he says that we should be tying it to the rate of inflation. I think that is consideration. But one would want to ask him whether, at his own time, he succeeded in doing this, even once. Never. Talk really is cheap, minority leader. But I think that the issue that we raise is a monumental thing that we should be considering. I mean, in negotiation of salary for the workers down below, maybe I agree that inflation should be a factor, maybe interest rates, even depreciation of the city. They are all factors that we should consider if really we want to maintain a certain base minimum standard of living for them. So whereas I agree with him, the principle that he's espousing, charity ought to have begun at home. When he was in charge, he was not able to do that, not even on one occasion. And yet today, he's preaching a gospel. The gospel is good though, but we should all unite behind it and imbibe. Mr. Speaker, government has set out to better manage public sector hiring within the budgetary constraints. And finally, also to introduce other expenditure measures, including cutting back on foreign travels, vehicle purchases, and use of off-site workshops, overseas training, and so on and so forth. These measures are really intended to reinvigorate the economy. The Speaker, the economy, we must admit, has come under severe strain, and the cost of living has ballooned and negatively affected the development of the Ghanaian peoples. The major causes are financial, but the economy performed abysmally and hopelessly, as my colleagues have insisted. Mr. Speaker, the facts don't bear this out at all. Mr. Speaker, if we have to compare in this annus for the MPP, if you have to compare with what happened under the NDC, this year we have the satanic developments of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And yet, growth in various sectors vindicate the MPP administration as better economic managers. Mr. Speaker, provisional data from the Ghana Statistical Service indicate that the overall GDP for the first half of 2022 was 4.0%. The first half. Mr. Speaker, compared with an average of 3.9% in 2016 when there was no COVID-19 and when there was no Russian-Ukraine war. In the agriculture sector, growth for 2014-22 up to 2022 bears eloquent testimony. Mr. Speaker, I think it's instructive to go through. 2014, agriculture grew by, when the NDC was in power, 0.9%. 2015, it was 2.1%. 2016, 2.7%. In 2017, it grew to 6.2%. Eric, you know I'm speaking to the truth. 2018, 4.9, 2019, 4.7, 2020, 7.3, 2021, 8.4, and now the first half is 4.9. The first half is 4.9, which is still better than 2014 when you were in power, when agriculture grew at 0.9%. Crops. Mr. Speaker, the cocoa sector in 2014 grew at 4.3%. 2015, and there was no COVID, under the NDC grew at -8%. 2016, -7%. You were in charge. There was no COVID. There was no Russian-Ukraine war. Mr. Speaker, now let me fast track it. 2021, 10.4, and even now, when times are so hard, the first half, 1.6%. Still significantly better than your -8% in 2015 and -7% in 2016. So when you talk courageously that you are better performers and better managers of the economy, one wonders where you are coming from. It's as if you have descended all of a sudden from Mars. From Mars. Yet you are here on Earth. Your track record is appalling. Your track record is humongously appalling. Mr. Speaker, forestry and logging, NDC, 2014, -1.5%. 2015, -3.9%. Mr. Speaker, 2021, 4.7. 2022, a horrible year for us, is 0.4%, which is still better than your negative growth. Which is still better than your negative grade. Mr. Speaker, fishing. 2014, you grew fishing at -23.3%. Mr. Speaker, then 2015 you did slightly better. You climbed up to 8.5%. 2016, 3.1%. Now, 2020, 14.1. 2021, 13.4%. 2022, the annus horribilis, 15.9%. 15.9%. Mr. Speaker, so where are you coming from? Mr. Speaker, industry, under the watch of the NDC, 2014, it grew at 1.1%. 2015, 1.2%. 2016, 4.3%. Today, our most horrible year, first half, 1.8%. So much better than your 2014, 2015, when there was no COVID, when there was no Russian-Ukraine war. Mr. Speaker, mining and quarrying. 2015, -8.3%. 2016, -0.2%. Today, our most horrible year, 0.6% positive. Mr. Speaker, so where are these our colleagues coming from? You are here on earth with us, Mr. Speaker. So one could go on and on. Your track record is so horrible. Your track record is so horrible that sometimes I wonder whether you have now been born into a country called Ghana, or you have been here all this while. Your track record, most appalling, most horrible. Mr. Speaker, education, services. Education 2014, you grew education at minus 0.3%. That's your track record. 2015, minus 0.5%. 26, you managed your head up the water a bit, and it was 2.3%. But 2022, our most horrible year, first half, education has grown by 9.0%. That's the track record of the MPP. Health and social work, 2.7% in 2014, minus 4.4% in 2015, and 2016, 4%. Today, 9.3%. That is health and social work. And finally, other services. In 2016, when you were leading, your track record, the growth in other service activities was minus 0.1%. Today, our annus horribilis, West year, is positive 2.0%. Mr. Speaker, in virtually every facet of the economy, the figures churned out under the NDC, under the MPP, are far better than under the NDC. So where from this contrivance and the showing voices? Mr. Speaker, the Constitution in Article 36 Clause 3, Article 36 Clause 3 provides for the state, and I'm quoting, to take appropriate measures to promote the development of agriculture and industry. The service sector exists, unquote, I should say. The service sector exists to lubricate agriculture and industry. Unfortunately for us, Mr. Speaker, the service sector is outstripping and indeed outpacing agriculture, and that cannot be good, because in Ghana we don't have a specialized service delivery system. So if you have the service industry growing as of this year, in 2022, the contribution of the Speaker, in 2022, the contribution of agriculture to GDP is 21.6%. Industry is 30.4%, and services is 48.0%. In such situations, growth may happen without the commensurate development, and that should worry us. Ghana's economy is not, as I said, a specialized service activity propelled one, and the circumstances that we need special emphasis to be placed on agriculture and industrial development to add value to agricultural and forest products. Mr. Speaker, clearly the Ghana situation today is not one of epileptic, and I'm quoting the minority leader who borrowed my own words without paying the relevant patents to me. Ghana's economy is not one of epileptic growth, since even under the hugely negative impact of COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukrainian imbroglio, the MPP administration has done better than the rather shambolic regime offered by the NDC. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, let me remind my colleagues that the COVID-19 pandemic, Ghana's economic development was about plateauing. And it's the reason why we saw consistent GDP growth rates. Mr. Speaker, it is why the theme for this year's budget is restoring and sustaining macroeconomic stability and resilience through inclusive growth and value addition. This is the essence of the income budget, complementing one another at this crucial time to ensure the unity and stability of our dear nation, Ghana. It is not, this income budget is not of the same order as the income by or union government, which was roundly rejected by Ghanaians. So, Mr. Speaker, let us all rise to rebuild the nation together, as the prophet Nehemiah urged his people in those days of extreme want. Mr. Speaker, so I entreat all of us to join ranks with the administration, to join hands and come together to rebuild, knowing that we are one people in one country with a common destiny. Mr. Speaker, let me wish for all of us God's blessings. God bless our homeland Ghana and make her great and strong. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity provided me.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, before I put the question, a reminder, in whatever you do, always remember, respect is earned. I end there. At the conclusion of the debate, Honorable members, at the conclusion of the debate, as many as are in favor of the motion, say aye. Those against, say no. Honorable members, I put the question again.
They are only they are listening.
Honorable members, please don't use your mics. And also don't shout. Honorable members, I'm to decide based on the voice vote. So please, just use your voice. Those in favor of the motion, say aye. Those against, say no. I think the ayes have it. Honorable members, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House has accordingly approved the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the year ending 31st December 2023. And the gavel will indicate session. Honorable members, First Deputy Speaker to take the chair. In the meantime, any guidance from leadership, I am informed that there are a number of motions to be moved by the committee you have decided against. Well, I'm guided by the House. So do we proceed? Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just conferring with the Minority Leader, and also the Finance Committee leadership. They have a lot to walk us through today. But the indication I'm having from them is that we should reprogram them for tomorrow. So in that regard, we can take an adjournment today. And the time reading 2:15, Mr. Speaker, I believe we do not need a formal motion to adjourn the House. Thank you very much.
Yes, minority front bench. Minority front bench.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, once it's past 2 p.m., we are in your hand, but I just want to draw your attention to an incident during the over 30 minutes that the leader was debating. The finance minister was occupying his seat. We know the practice in the House is that the leader's seats are not occupied by any other person. But the minister, who is not even a member of the House, occupied the seat for the leader. I drew the attention to it. I don't know whether there was a reshuffle or there was a coup at the time that he was occupying the leader's seat. So probably we should all learn from that, so that in future we don't occupy the leader's seat. So I support the leader that we're in your hands to agenda.
Honorable members, before I put the question on the adjournment, I have not been officially informed by His Excellency the President Cabinet reshuffle, and I have not read any such message to the House. With this, I put the question. What's the time now? Oh, happily you are in my hands. And so I proceed to adjourn the House. You want to work? The work of an MP is not only on the floor of the House. And so we will stop the plenary session. You are allowed to continue your work, even in your sleep. The House is accordingly adjourned till Wednesday, 7th December 2022 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. The House is adjourned.
Hello.